Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast with Kathy, Mark, and Burk, talking about movies. We're going to take another little trip into the 1980s.
Yeah, Burke, I think you got something for us. But before we get that movie, let's do a quick talk about our membership levels.
Reminder.
Yeah, it's just a reminder for $2.99 a month, you get all those four things right there. And for $4.99 a month, you get that fifth one too, which is really cool. So you can just say, hey, I love this movie. You haven't talked about it. Please talk about it. If you're a member at $4.99 a month, we will do it and we'll give a shout out to you. So
That's right.
and also we have a Slack channel now. Kathy, you can talk a little bit about that. And
yeah, it's a new one we added. You can have a Slack channel. You get the you get membership to that. You'll get to talk to all of us, and Elizabeth and Lara and any of our other guests are also members. So you can hopefully talk to them, and we respond. And it's just a fun place to hang out, a little more casual, a little more immediate than just comments on the video. So we love those also.
Yeah.
And people are always dropping in like trailers for us to review in there too. So it's very interactive. So I highly recommend coming on in.
yeah, and
we have some.
That includes Mark and Burk.
Maybe. Yeah. There's some videos in there too. We're trying to fill it up with some really interesting content that maybe goes a little bit deeper than some of the things that we do here, like sort of deep dive type stuff into things that we like, more personal things that we like to watch, like movies or an aspect of a movie that we really wanted to discuss, but maybe it's not, not like universal appeal kind of stuff, mainstream.
Yeah,
it's fun.
So $2.99 a month or $4.99 a month if you go for a monster.
So cheap.
Consider it. Yes, it is. You get a lot for that. A lot for your bang for your buck for sure. Yeah.
And no one sees them but you guys, members. So
that's right.
Yeah,
we're keeping it all secret from all you out there who aren't members.
Yeah. But for everybody who this is our
get
community.
some FOMO out there.
Yeah,
exactly. So Burke, talk about your '80s movie.
Well, I was, the idea was when we were talking about doing 80s world, the whole idea, the idea is for this one, what is the most 80s movie you can think of? In other words, when people think about the 80s, there's certain things they think about. And I'm thinking people who maybe didn't really experience the 80s themselves. And they think that everybody was walking down the street singing "Never Gonna Give You Up,"
Yeah.
But it's like, nah, it wasn't quite like that, and it wasn't, nobody. It was like whole towns of people dressed like the Ramones. It wasn't like that. It was a little bit
like that.
Actually, it was like that.
Hollywood Boulevard, yeah.
Yeah, it was. Never mind. Let's. No. It was it was more like that than it was like what some of the films that we saw in the 80s tried to make us think the 80s was during the 80s, if that makes any sense. Some 80s films portrayed the 80s inaccurately, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
And the idea, in films, a lot of times everybody is hyper styled. They're styled. They got hair and wardrobe, makeup, and all that kind of stuff coming in, making sure their clothes are perfect and their hair is perfect and their makeup is perfect. And that wasn't necessarily the average everyday thing. And I think if you were to jump into the 80s right now, it might take you a minute to realize you were in the 80s because it was not that different. Or was it? But like the movie I'm going to talk about today is one of those movies that if you watch this movie and you look at the way they're dressed and everything, you think, wow, the 80s was so wild. Like they all looked like this.
That was fast.
No, they looked like there's Jeff Goldblum in there and there's Peter Weller and it was
down and
but that it's like the big shoulder pads on the guy on the right side there.
Yeah.
Why is the one guy dressed like Pee Wee Herman?
Yeah.
That's the crew.
That's the crew.
But everybody played saxophone in the 80s, and
always.
A big
Even Bill Clinton played the
saxophone. Yeah.
But
the movie I'm going to talk about, obviously, is Buckaroo Banzai. And, we've got, it's like across the eighth dimension. It is very 80s. Very 80s movie. It's a science fiction comedy. It has John Lithgow in it. And despite it being sort of hyper 80s, I remember in the 80s when I saw it, it was a little cringy. It was like,
God. Yeah.
Yeah,
I saw it
there's
at
a
the theater, and I remember
Mhm.
going because I was expecting something else. I mean, it's definitely
Yeah.
an offbeat, one of a kind film, but it starts off with he's like in this super car, and he's like this kind of
Right.
like James Bond guy, and he's going like like the Bonneville Salt Flats or something, but he goes through like a mountain, so he
Right.
somehow goes into this different dimension, and he brings something back, and blah blah. The story kind of goes from there.
Mhm.
But I was
He's
kind of
also the world's best brain surgeon,
Yeah.
and he plays in a band, and he's a great character. It's funny, Peter Weller pulls it off because he just you can believe he's a brain surgeon, an inventor and world traveler and all these things. It's a parody of those kind of characters, and I believe there's an old character from the pulp magazines called Doc Savage, and I think Buckaroo Banzai was kind of a bit of a parody of those old pulp comics, like and the characters like Doc Savage, and it's a science fiction film that actually is kind of a serious, not really serious, but it's a straightforward science fiction story that you could have made that story without the funny parts, but it's that plus funny. So, and John Lithgow is pretty much the substance of the humor in this one. He is hilarious, and Dr. Emilio Lizardo, and it's just got a great cast. It's got a cast of people who were just sort of starting out, people that are still out there working, and that we all, these beloved people like Jeff Goldblum and all these people. Great, fun movie. But there's a scene near the beginning where Buckaroo Banzai finishes some brain surgery or something, and he goes and plays in his band. And of course, there's it's saxophones and everything. It's so 80s, and it's like that kind of that disco 80s beat.
Keytar.
And, yeah, and somebody's got a keytar, yeah, and all those gigantic shoulder pads and the the haircuts. You'll know what I'm talking about when you see it. I recommend this movie. I love it, but it's a little bit pushed on the exaggeration of 80s.
Well,
Yeah.
it's very 80s. It
Yeah.
screams it. And the guy who wrote it and directed, W.D. Richter, I don't know if he ever did another film. To be
Really?
honest with you, I'm not sure. He was one of the kind of came and went. It adds to the cult status of the movie because it was
Yeah.
sort of this guy came. I went to see it. I thought it was going to be. I didn't know what to expect, so I was thinking maybe it's kind of like Mad Max meets James
Right.
Bond. And I was thinking it was going to be sort of this super adventure, kind of like really kind of crazy, but it's not that. It has this humor. John Lithgow is completely unhinged,
Yeah.
his role, and it was different. And I'm not sure if it's a cult film because it probably didn't do very well at the box office because people didn't know what to make of it.
Well, it was
Right.
such a mishmash. Like it was such a mishmash and a bunch of different genres put together. Like it didn't really
Yeah.
know what it was. And this movie came out at the same time like Ghostbusters,
Right.
Gremlins. It's like not Raiders, Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, the second one.
Yeah.
So it came out during a time where all these very very precise genres came out. They were very clean. Everybody knew what they were. So when this came out, it was just kind of this crazy, what the hell? And then also, unlike those other movies I mentioned, maybe Gremlins a little bit, but it's campy. It's like
Yeah.
when you see it now, it doesn't age well. Like it looks
Right.
kind of painfully 80s, but that in a way is sort of its charm. Like
Yeah.
it's like it looks super cheap and dated, but that's sort of part of what makes it cute. So it's kind
That's
of
one of the things I was going to mention. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's what makes it an '80s movie because when I'm
Yeah.
going through my list, I think of all the great movies. But they stand alone. You don't say that movie like a Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's a 1980s movie, but you don't think of
Yeah.
it as that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think of something. How does it feel dated? Like it was time stamped 1985
Yep.
or whatever year it was made.
Right.
And that's where Buckaroo Banzai certainly has that. It's like this
Mhm.
was made back then.
Yeah.
There's no collared shirts, that kind of stuff.
Every frame of it is 80s.
I know. It's funny
But
to see
it's-
movies
it's-
that are futuristic, and now we're in the future, and there's no internet in this movie. So it's funny to see here are these futuristic movies that still no one predicted like what the future would really be like, and that's always kind of funny too.
I think this movie took place in the 80s, though. I think it's a very it was supposed to be the
I thought it was
present,
the
like an
future, no?
alternate
alternate
reality
dimension.
where Buckaroo
Okay.
Banzai is hugely world famous.
I just always assumed it was in the future because it looks so wacky.
Yeah. It's like probably one of those movies that says the day after tomorrow. but it's
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, it's like in the future, 5 hours from now.
yeah.
Right.
But I actually love this movie. It's fun to watch for me now. I think, in fact, it's more fun for me to watch it now than it was actually in the 80s. Because when I watched it in the 80s, it seemed to me to be very trendy, like, oh, God, they're doing all this stuff. I think I remember thinking at the time, this movie is going to look so dated in just a couple of years. But the fact that it's so dated, it's so like 1983 or 4, they're very precise. And it's fun in that way when you watch it now, because the fact that the production design, I think, is brilliant in this film, because what you said earlier is so cheap and sort of cheesy. It's got this kind of hack together. I always talk about this sort of junk aesthetic that movies like Star Wars, the early Star Wars films, had, where you can kind of tell the props were sort of bashed together out of junk boxes and stuff. And I love that. This movie has a similar vibe to it as far as the appearance of it, parts of it, like his supercar that he drives through the mountain, and the various props. There's this device that allows you to travel through dimensions. It's like this little thing about that big, and it looks like somebody put that together from model kit parts in about 5 minutes. And I kind of love that. A lot of the tech in the film is sort of duct taped to the wall, and there's wires coming off here and wires going out the window and stuff. It's a fun movie to look at as far as production design, because you can tell that they were just having a blast on this.
So apparently Richter co-wrote Big Trouble in Little China,
Yeah.
which kind of gives you that weird humor, like
Yes.
that strange
Gotcha.
kind of action
Yeah.
cartoon.
Talk about an 80s movie. I mean,
Yeah.
Seriously.
right there too.
There's another one, yeah,
I
for
know,
sure.
so
Yeah. Well, that's a good one, Burk. A good choice.
that makes me want to watch it again for sure.
That's
Yeah.
the one I bring. It's
Yeah.
here's another poster for it, I think.
I don't know. Yeah, this looks
This
like
sort of-
maybe
The French one, maybe.
Like the Mad Max
the
kind
international
of look
poster.
to it. But that's the poster I remember.
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
more what the movie actually looks like.
Yeah.
That other
Yeah.
badass one isn't.
Yeah.
We pull these posters. Some are fan made, some are reissues, some are international. You never know sometimes, but some of them are worth looking at.
Yeah.
All right, that was great.
Thanks,
All
Burk.
right.
Buckaroo
All
Banzai.
right.
Yes, I recommend it. As much as I put down the vibe of it, the 80s, thing, it's really funny. It's a smart movie, and there's a lot of little funky details in there. There's things about a watermelon that's really funny. When you watch it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I recommend it.
It is a bona fide cult film. It was not
Yes,
made
it
to be
is.
a cult film. It just didn't
Yeah.
do well at first because people didn't get it, and now it's gotten this kind of cult behind it, and that makes
Oh,
it
yeah.
your cult film, not trying to be, and that's
It's
what
a
you
leg-
want from a
it's-
cult
it's a-
film. You
it's a
don't try to
legit-
be a cult film.
It's
Yeah.
a legit
The
cult film.
saddest thing about it was when it ended, there was a title card at the end before the credits. It said Buckaroo Banzai will return in, and it had the name of the next episode. And it was like, oh, cool, they're going to make a sequel.
I've heard whispers of a series. They're trying to do a streaming series for years. They keep trying
Yeah.
to do like a TV
Right.
series or a streaming series. I think that would be a great idea. I mean,
Yeah.
Would be.
with our current
And to set it in
technology
the
to bring
80s.
it in, yeah, it would be in the 80s. That would be amazing. Because
Yeah.
I mean, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Everybody loves seeing stuff set in the 80s. And I
Absolutely.
like Stranger Things because they kept it kind of base. They didn't make it super cartoon 80s.
Right.
They could do that with this, but still have fun with it.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
That's a good idea. I keep
All
hearing
right.
about that idea, though.
Let's go
ever
pitch
since yeah.
We're going to make it
Cinnamon-
happen.
Cinemanda presents
That's right.
the adventure of Buckaroo Banzai across the eighth
That'll work.
dimension. Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Take care,
Bye.
everybody.
There it
See you
is.
soon. Thank you.
Bye.